Well, good morning. Welcome to everyone this morning. I just am excited to be here with you all to kind of field some questions and share more of the information and the vision. But before we did that, last week we didn't want in any way, shape, or form to give even the appearance of the idea that the current elder board or pastors were necessarily the only or primary visionaries behind this, because the truth is, for me, my first memory of the church leadership discussing the growth and the increase that God has brought here was, I'm going to say, more than 10 years ago. And I think I can say that like really safely. And we were sitting down. Pastor Paul Beach was still here. Some of you men in the room, and I apologize that I probably am not able to recall exactly, but some of the men in this room were sitting as deacons at that time. And we wanted to play just a quick PowerPoint, Joel, if you'd start that for me, to just say thank you to the men and the women who have given countless hours, prayer, discussion, feedback. Suffice it to say, for those of us that have been on the building committee and the other things, we've had some friction-filled meetings because we don't always see things eye to eye. You'll also see on the screen, there's going to be some names that you'll see, and some might create a reaction. You're thinking, why'd they put their name up there? Because maybe they left for a not good reason, or maybe some of them left just because God was calling them to somewhere else. And I was kind of passionate and adamant that we put every single name that God has ever used in this process. Why? Because I want it to be crystal clear to you as a church that we are not here today because we've been squeaky clean. We're not here today because we've done it all right. We're not here today because every person in the process has been holy. We are here for the sheer reason of God's grace. That's it. And I just wanted to give him all the praise, all the credit, all the glory for how he has used a hodgepodged, messed up group of orphans, in a sense, to bring it all to this point today. And I wanted to make sure to give a lot of credit, particularly to Pastor Paul Beach, who was the pastor here before me, that got that ball rolling at a meeting a long time ago down at Gloria Brubaker's and Louis Brubaker's river lot. That's where we were at. I just remember sitting under their house and talking about the future vision. And so just thank you. If you've been part of the process and you are here this morning, would you mind standing just so we can acknowledge you and just give them a round of applause? I know you're not jumping up, but please, would you do that? Stand up for acknowledgement. Randy, I know you're part of it. Come on. He's sitting there with his arms crossed even. Like Dennis, I think you're part of it too, all the way back. There's a couple others, so if I'm missing you and you're not standing, but can we just give them a big round of applause for our gratitude? And I'd like to just open up in a word of prayer, and then we'll kick it off with the next video. Heavenly Father, truly, just like Jesus, your very lineage has blemishes all through it. In fact, you have a harlot, a whore, in your very lineage, in the scriptures. And Lord, we as a church, we so much in a way wish our story could be different. But Lord, the reality is we believe in a gospel that redeems filthy, rotten, selfish people. And Father, may we as a church, no matter when or how, anything we do, building projects, ministries, may we never lose focus of just the simple gospel. That everything we believe in and everything we trust in is the fact that Jesus is all that we need. And so thank you, Jesus, for just your faithfulness to us as a church in our undeserving times. Thank you for the countless ways that your mercies have been shown, and for just unifying us as a church around the beauty of all that Jesus Christ is. It's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen.
Well, good morning. So I want to give you a little bit of a background, a little bit of history of what the past several years have been for those of you that may not know, or as a reminder for those who have been around for a while. About 8 years ago, we started seeing some space issues and also seeing just some organizational issues for the flow of ministries and that kind of thing that would be helpful if we made some improvements. So at that time, our church council made the decision to start our giving once a month to go toward our building fund to prepare for what was coming ahead someday. So in the midst of that then, in 2015, we had a plan put together that was originally on site here to accommodate for some of that growth. In 2016, we made the change of moving our second service from our sanctuary, where it was beginning to overflow, into our Family Life Center. And we began the process of each week throughout the whole school year of setting up and tearing down, using it for Awana, and it's a very, very heavily used multi-purpose facility right now. So then fast forward to 2018, and another opportunity came with some land that was offered to the church that we ended up accepting, and we changed the plan to a new structure just on the east side of town. So we continued to save all the years all along and have been saving since then. Then, when the pandemic hit, we hit pause on moving forward too much with it, just to see where things fleshed out with that. And last year, 2021, for the church, it was a bit of a year of resetting, of some realignment. We made a few new staff hires. We also put a new constitution in place and got some of the organizational changes in place that we were seeing were necessary and needed for continued growth. And then this year, at the beginning of the year, a council of elders asked the building committee to sit down after the changes since the pandemic and see where we're at. And Levi Niemand took over as our building committee chairman. He's going to give an update on where the building committee is at.
So good morning. As Ryan said, I'm Levi Niemand, for those of you who may not know me. And at the beginning of the year, I was asked to help lead the building committee. The group of elders proposed the question to us, what can we afford to build sooner rather than later, as we see the continued growth in many areas of ministry. The challenge was the 2018 plan, which was roughly $5.6 million at that time, had now inflated into an $8+ million project. So the building committee, which is comprised of Pastor Aaron, Bill Troxel, Ryan Manival, Gene Rouse, Stanley Schaefer, Cody Shaw, and myself, began to work to decipher a potential plan. We sought insight from the leaders and staff of the church to determine what would be necessary to continue our current ministry under one roof while allowing for some room to grow. So after 8 months of work, where are we? We've continued to work with our local and trusted builder, Neil Glick of Payne Construction. As I'm sure all of you can understand, even in the past few months, we have had to deal with even more inflation changes. However, we feel we've been able to come up with a few options that will work well for all areas of ministry. They range from a roughly $5.5 million option that would allow us to meet our current ministry needs and have some room for future growth, to a $5.1 million option that would meet our current needs but not have much wiggle for the immediate future. So assuming the spectacular annual giving that we have seen over the past 6 years continues this year, we see it as quite realistic that we could move forward with the lower $5.1 million option by the beginning of next year. However, we also know that God works in great ways and understand that if we were to see some extraordinary giving somewhere between $600,000 to $1 million, we could possibly build the bigger option up front and potentially even have it finished and ready for use.
Okay, so today what we're going to be doing here is like we have on the papers, the handouts, and they're in the back if anybody needs any. Basically, we want to give a progress update. Last week, our elders took basically the normal message part of the service and shared a little bit kind of what they see God doing, what they see for next steps along with this building project. So what we're going to start with here is I'm going to hand it over to Levi. He's going to share just a little bit what's gone into the plan that we have, how we see that Ken working, some of the limitations that we see with that, and just how basically the thoughts behind so far that we've seen for the pieces working together. And then we want to give opportunity to hear from you all for questions that you have just about the whole process. So I'll hand it over to Levi.
Good morning. So, as stated in the video, and as Ryan said, this is
been kind of a new process for this entire year so far. We talked about a little bit at the annual business meeting, and the elders felt that it was important that we move forward, that now's the time to move forward with a building. So the challenge was, how do we get everything we can into the building that we can afford to build? And are we able to even get everything in one building? At one time, we started out at the beginning of the process, we weren't sure that youth ministries and that kind of stuff might still need to function over here on a Wednesday night. But fortunately, with a lot of effort, a lot of thought, a lot of Bill Troxel and I taking little pieces of paper and cutting them out and moving things around on the paper, because we don't know how to run AutoCAD. We feel the plan that you have in front of you is a very solid plan that can house all the current Sunday morning and Wednesday evening ministries. There was a lot of effort went into it from the leaders, the youth leaders, the pastors of the church, to make sure that we're not shortchanging any one ministry, but to make sure that we are getting what we need currently and allowing some room for growth. And Stanley will show a little more detailed later of the growth part, how some rooms are, slightly larger and can handle more capacities than we currently have. So now I'm going to see if this slideshow works, and I'm going to kind of give you the Levi way of looking at things. Stanley has the very detailed room by room look. I'm going to give you the color coordinated, high level, easy to look at overview of right now. We'll look at Sunday school ministries, what that would look like on a Sunday morning, and just so you can see how everything. All right, Ryan, okay. So the green shaded areas are basically the children's classrooms. There's also what we'll call the fellowship hall, for a lack of a better term. Up there is the big room, kind of in the center of the aisle there. So you can see that, and this was something we worked at very hard, because we know right now we're kind of spread out, right? I drop one of my kids off in the church and one here and one. This allows us to be all the children in one wing, and it is also an easily securable area for the future. The youth classes, Josh played a big role in this one. The youth really have one very, very large room to work with, and obviously that'll be laid out in a manner that they will be able to function good as a youth group in both junior high and senior high youth. And again, these are all for Sunday school. Well, the next slide will be the Awana Ministries. And then the adult classes. Now we're the ones that get to be spread out, just like we are here, but they're kind of spread out. There's 4 in the front, 3 in the middle, potentially in the fellowship hall, just depending on how it works out with Sunday school classes. So that's why that one's overlaid twice there. There's a couple classrooms you'll see in the sanctuary. That's one of those things we didn't really want to have to do, but it's one of those things we had to do to make things work, as far as, and at this point we don't know if they're permanent or temporary type classrooms. And I'll talk a little bit more on the opportunity we have on this next slide. And then you'll also see that Ryan and I kind of did some fancy work without the drawings, but down there between the bathrooms, that is a potential space that we could actually end up possibly putting a room in there if we need to for our Sunday school classes, versus just a closet at this point. So I labeled the orange future possibilities. We talked a little bit about the 5.1, 5.6, and beyond spending. We know, we've talked to enough banks that we know from a banking standpoint what they will allow us to loan to, I'll say, a high level. We haven't gotten down to any kind of approval or anything like that, but they've looked at numbers enough to say, yes, we could definitely loan you this number of money. So we know that money, it will allow us to move forward with the building, especially at the 5.1 with our current rate of giving. This front area is the area of opportunity, I call it. These are the areas that aren't included in the $5.1 million project. They would not even be there, and definitely not be finished. But as you can see, we're showing them in what the potential would be in a finished state. The front, I gotta turn around so I'm right. The front left section would be offices, classrooms, conference rooms, that sort of thing potentially. And the front right would have the potential to be future coffee house ministry, possibly youth room, anything like that. So we really don't know what exactly those would entail at this point, because obviously that's up to us. And when I say us, not us up here speaking today, I mean us as a church. It's up to us what we can do, what we can afford. We know those areas will be great for future and will be great for growth and will allow us quite a bit of room up front for growth. So I think Aaron's going to speak to some potential timelines later of, when we want to look at things, but we're not putting any numbers to it and say we're like we have in the past where we said, well, when we hit this mark, we're going to move here, and when we hit this mark, we're going to move there. We want this to be that we are the deciders. We decide what move we make next, and when we get to, Aaron will tell us the exact dates, I think it's basically the beginning of the year, then we'll look back and say, here's what we feel we can do, and then be able to bring a proposal to you all to vote on and decide whether we move forward or not with how much of it. So now I'll show one. So the great thing about this was we started out, we didn't really think we were going to necessarily be able to fit everything in there. For Sunday school especially, but the next one's even more amazing because we were almost certain that Wednesday nights were going to be kind of split. But I'll show you here on Awana. It's pretty much the same general layout, but we got a few different moves for youth group. So again, children's pretty much the same. You can see they kind of take over a few adult classrooms in the center there. So that's why there's some doors placed the way they are and that sort of thing, so that things can be moved about and still be a secured area. And then obviously the sanctuary you see showing as a green area, but that's still a multi-purpose area. We would still need to move chairs to use it, but we don't need to move this, which is, if you've ever helped set this place up, this is the big deal. So the youth, there you see they would have their youth room, obviously. Then the 4 adult classrooms would be what they call breakout rooms for the youth to be able to go in and use those classrooms during a Wednesday evening. And then obviously the shared space in the multi-purpose room. And then we see prayer meeting being able to happen in that one kind of classroom there. It's by itself, you're able to get into without being in the secured area, so it's welcoming to anyone. And then kind of blue there in the lobby, it's one thing we worked at. I haven't been to any of the churches that these guys have, but they've been to quite a few churches where they have these huge open areas coming into them, and they work well as a multi-purpose space. So coffee house Wednesday night, we've even talked about there's some churches that use them for small wedding receptions and small events and small things like that. We don't know how exactly that would pan out for us as far as that goes, but we know it's a good usable space. It's not just a giant hallway, which it can look like on there, like what in the world are you building such a big hallway for? Well, that's not what it's all about. And also think about when we come in here on a Sunday morning, the flow of people into church and what this would allow for people to meet and greet between Sunday school and talk and chat and have that good time. Randy, to pick on me as we and then again, the future possibilities is still the same in this one, right? This is the one, like I said, that we control, and we get to decide what that looks like moving forward here in the next few months. But as I said, we do know that we can move forward with a building of some degree. It's just now what level of a building do we want it to be? Is it the building that is just the bare bones, minimal, it gets us everything we need, but it doesn't have a ton of room for expansion? Or is it a building with those two orange areas completely unfinished that we can finish on our own as time permits? Or is it a building that those two front areas and partially finished out that we can maybe begin using right away? That's what we get to decide, what we have the opportunity as a church to be part of making possible. I have no idea if I overran time or not, so.
Check, okay, there we go. Okay, Stanley's going to come and share just a little bit more about kind of the ministry flow, how that would work. Take that.
Good morning. I apologize if I repeat some of the things Levi already said, but kind of prepared how I want to go over and explain page 2 in your packet. So you may want to get that in front of you. It's the one that says comparisons of current ministry locations at the top. And as you've been given information about the building over the last several weeks, one thing you've heard is that because of the significantly increased costs over the last few years, the building committee has had to cut back on some of our plans from years ago. And as a result of this information, most of the questions that I've heard deal with whether or not the plans that we're presenting will provide us with what we really need. And is it really worthwhile spending all that money if we aren't getting what we need anyway? So I'm hoping as I explain this chart, you can take the information that I'm giving and decide for yourselves whether or not you think that plan is worthwhile. When the elders asked the building committee to resume meeting again about a year ago, one of our main priorities was that we plan a facility that would not only allow us to continue providing our current ministries, but also include potential for growth. And as we worked over the last year, we eventually landed on the plan that you see in your packets. And as I mentioned earlier, my goal in what I'm doing here in these next few minutes is to give a brief explanation of the chart so that you can better picture in your mind what it is we're talking about. And you'll have a better understanding of what the plan really provides for our ministry. And then you can decide if you think it's worthwhile or not. And I especially want to emphasize that the main reason we created this chart was to allow us to easily compare the new facility with our current facilities, and to make sure that within the new one, there was a location for every one of our current ministry groups. The basic design will most likely not change significantly, but some of the room assignments for specific groups may change as we continue our discussions with other ministry leaders. And another important detail, and Levi already said this, but I'm going to repeat it. I want to make clear that the new facility will allow us to conduct all of our current Sunday morning and Wednesday evening ministries at that new location. Now, as you look at the chart, and this is the part that may be confusing to some of you, but as you look at it, the left column lists all of our ministry groups and areas. And the top section is basically the groups that meet on Sunday mornings, or for Sunday morning worship. The middle group is Sunday school groups, and the bottom section is Wednesday night groups. Now, as you move sideways across the chart, the next two columns, the second and third column, show you the current location for each of our groups along with the size of that location here at these facilities. And the next two columns show an area that we assigned to each ministry group in the new location and the size of those locations. And then the last column shows the difference between the two. And I want to say a little more about that, but as we're looking at that, don't be overly concerned about the room numbers. First of all, if you look at that plan that you have on page 3 of your handout, you can't read the room numbers anyway. The other thing is some of them may be reassigned. In fact, what Levi just showed you, there's at least 1 or 2 rooms that are slightly different than what I'm showing on this chart because there's nothing written in stone with those. But again, remember the main purpose of this chart is to make sure we have a place to designate for each group that we currently have. Now, although I tried to make it as clear as I could, we certainly understand that it may be confusing to some of you, and if you're not understanding some of the numbers, please feel free to contact us later and we'll try to go over those. Now, I'm not going to go over any of the specific numbers on the chart, but I do want to point out a few places where numbers are missing. You'll see there are several X's on the chart. Those indicate rooms that aren't available in our current facilities, but we wanted to make sure they would be available at the new facility. You also see a number of question marks. Those question marks indicate extremely large areas here at our current facilities that are currently being used by groups that don't actually make use of the entire spaces. For example, some of our Awana groups, some of our Sunday school classes meet in the church sanctuary. Some of them meet in the fellowship hall just because there are separate places that they can meet. But they don't really, the groups really don't make use of that entire area. So when it comes to comparison, it wasn't really an apples to apples comparison, and we didn't even bother including numbers there because it really wouldn't make sense. Another question you may have, the grade 7 and 8 Sunday school class is listed as location to be determined. That means what it says. We know there's going to be space available for it, but the youth leaders are currently in discussions about how they want to set up their program. And like I said, we know there's space for it, but we listed it as to be determined because it will be determined. I want to again emphasize the chart shows there are definitely spaces available for all of our current Sunday morning and Wednesday evening ministries. Now, you may have noticed in that last column that a few of the new locations actually offer less space than what we're currently using. And I just want to make a couple comments about that. Because in these cases, the building committee is confident that the space in the new facility is actually a more conducive space for ministry than what we currently have, because some of our current groups and classes meet in rooms that have odd shapes, or rooms that are very long and narrow, or rooms that have fixed seating, like the pews in the church, or rooms that have support posts in the middle, or several support posts in the middle of the room. And there's also some rooms that there's frequent distractions because people have to frequently move through those areas, even though it is a classroom. Another comparison that will allow you, I think, to better understand the total size of the new facility is the statement at the bottom of the chart. Now, if you look at that statement, you'll see the total area contained in the new facility is about the same as the total area of all of our current facilities. But keep in mind, when you think about our current facilities, that includes both levels of the church, both levels of the fellowship hall, and both levels of the Family Life Center. It includes all the levels of the office, all the levels of the annex, or the Ocker House, as some of you know it, both levels of the Milliken House, the Trek House, the sewing house, both garages, the storage building behind me here. So the total area of our current facilities is about equal to the total area of that new facility. Now, in closing, after you go home from today's presentation, please continue looking at this chart and try to understand what it's showing. Try to picture in your mind what it's showing, and if you still have questions, please feel free to talk to one of us. We'll certainly try to answer whatever we can. But the last statement I want to make is, I know that I can, and I'm pretty sure everybody on the building committee can, confidently say that the proposed facilities will allow us to continue to conduct all of our current Sunday and Wednesday ministries under one roof in areas that are obviously updated, in areas that are without question more secure, in rooms that are larger and or more conducive to ministry, and very importantly, in a facility that offers the potential for further expansion and growth. So thank you.
So Aaron's going to share just a little bit, kind of the key word from the beginning when we got rolling again was compromise. So he's going to share a little bit, now that we understand that plan a little bit better, what that means with this property and everything.
Just real quick, we knew at the beginning with the increased cost and where things were as the elders prayed that we weren't going to be able to just proceed forward with the, I think it was like 55,000 square foot, $8+ million plan. And so then that's when the gears began to shift and realize that for a period of time, and we're not naming that period of time or saying it's indefinite or that it's short, we don't know, but we were willing as elders to leave the door open to the reality of using both properties. And so some of that is some of what gives the potential for immediate growth in other areas. And we know that some of you that are detail oriented and you want to kind of in a sense know, well, what's every specific area being used for? I'm happy to stand here and tell you we don't have a specific use for every area of this current property. And that'll be the first time in 16 years that I could ever say that. For 16 years, every single time a new idea, a new ministry, or new opportunity has come our way, we've had to figure out how to juggle, shift, adapt, amend, or shrink in order to be able to make it fit. And so in the short term, having both properties allows us for the first time to say, what could we do? Could we have a more specific senior ministry where we could do day opportunities for people who are shut in or others to be able to be brought here to minister? Would we be able to give OCC a specific area in the basement of the church to be able to spread their legs out and have an opportunity to be better prepared year round? Could we have specific worship nights here, there, or other places? It'll allow other outreach ministries to stay located here, volleyball, RC ministry, perhaps other school groups, etc. We'll be able to use this without having to interrupt the flow of the sanctuary at the new property so that other worship events and opportunities continue to go forward unhindered. We, for the time being, plan on offices staying here. Again, some of this is we're admitting that we want to be open to God's leading because we don't want to stand and say we have everything figured out in every nook and cranny. We don't know, but we are definitely open and receptive to whatever the Lord would do. We know we showed on that one picture offices. This is spitballing. We're saying, well, maybe that space that we showed offices will become more dedicated adult ministry classrooms that will allow children's ministry to kind of sweep down into the adult area, and then we're able to have completely separated children's ministries here, adult ministries here, and for the time being, adapt and leave the offices here so that we could have more ministry space there. We're not saying that's what will happen, we're saying it could, and we're just trying to leave those doors open that we as elders really do see the need. I think we talked about this and we're unanimous in that larger $5.5 million plan. We're just coming to you saying, yes, it's up to you, but we really see the absolute potential and growth opportunities that are there. And so I was just asked to kind of give a little bit of clarity on the both properties. And again, we understand that they're, how's that going to work? And, the amazing thing that I keep going back to is soccer camp, vacation Bible school, craft camp have operated really well for years without anyone even raising that question. So the question's fair, but I also want to point to the fact that we've done it time and time again without any issues. And so questions are fair, but also acknowledge how it's been done and how God has graced us in that process of being adaptable and being willing to improvise for the purpose of growing his kingdom. So that's my part.
Okay, so we want to give some time here for questions. Bill has a mic he's going to run around, and think Oscar's going to run this other mic. So Levi and I will answer questions. But so also, I just want to say, if you have like specific things about exact rooms, layout kind of thing, if it's super specific, we ask that you bring those to the building committee. But this is a little bit more of like, the overall concept, the ministry flow, and those kinds of things, questions about the overall plan. So with that, I'll open it up here for questions or input that people have.
Hello.
There we go.
I have two quick questions. On the plan that you had out where it said the unfinished stair, that's still, the building's going to be around that, correct? That's just going to be open space, basically, what I'm hearing you say. When we build, that space will be there, just won't have any walls for rooms or anything like that. Is that understand what you're saying?
So the 5.5 million threshold has those included, just not finished. The lesser plan, those aren't included at all. They would have to be built at a later time.
Okay, so the exterior wall would stop then where the sanctuary wall is at, is what you're
Correct.
saying right now?
Yeah, yep.
Ken, just to talk about that a little bit, so it also changes the entire structure of the building. And the reason we feel that second, the higher threshold is the way to go is when we were sitting in a meeting with Neil, it was like the light bulb come on for him, and he's like, holy cow, if we do this right, we could change the whole roof pitch, we can move this, we can move columns. He's looking at it from a whole different level than we are. And he said in reality, you can build those front two structures unfinished for a lot cheaper than you're going to build the rest of it finished. And that's true. I think it holds out to, it's like $100 a square foot less. Now, obviously they're unfinished, so that's reasonable, but it does, if those are not able to be built with the building, with the initial big structure, they will then become flat roof structures like we had originally looked at in the other plan, where if we are able to build them at one shot, even if we keep them unfinished, then they will all be under one pitched roof, so on and so forth.
Right, okay. And that clears. Now, there's no basement for this new facility, right? Okay. And then my other question was, I know Aaron shared about using our facilities here, but is there any discussion about some of the houses that we have around here, maybe selling those to go towards future stuff? Because I can see using the FLC here and all the stuff we're talking about in that regard still, but there's some houses we have that we could sell and use that towards this. Is that being discussed or what?
There's a lot of discussion that goes on around a lot of these things. So yes, all of those thoughts and ideas have been put out there, thrown out there. I think we've tried to set ourselves up as we use these houses to make them still be usable as houses. We didn't, it's not like the facility down the road here where they tore out all the bathrooms and all that. We still have bathrooms, and they could quickly be turned back into a house. So yes, those are possibilities.
And real quick, actually on that note, the guy sitting next to you can testify to this. Many years ago, we were talking about making this property all in one deed, and we didn't for one reason or another, and I believe that was God's grace to us, that almost every property we have is on a separate deed, so it can be sold separately if that's the door God would open without any extra deeding or whatever would be required.
Kenny answered my question, so I just have some thoughts here. As you look at life and you wonder how you got to where you did, I think about that myself, and I look at the church here and we wonder, how did we get here? We can look back, we can analyze that, we had a church sanctuary at one time, and then we did the fellowship hall, and then, then there's another group of leaders that moved forward to this, and another group of leaders and deacons and staff, and we, look to the future. And as we continue to look to the future of this next ground, it really does sound, wow, this is like bizarre. Why do churches have to move, or why do we have to? But when you look at the things that they shared last Sunday with the deacons and the pastors and the security, our world is so different today than it was, in my mind I think, why do we have to be so secure? And I get it. It's just a weird world today, and it's not the same. And we do have a lot of mixed up classrooms, and the flow will be a lot better. But then when it comes down right to it, you look at, $5 million for the home budget, the people that just have home budgets and stuff. We think, well, that's not even we can just write it off. That's really unnecessary. We don't need to do that. But in my past, just being in business, and there's other guys here that have traveled this same journey and have spent a lot of money. Does it take a step of faith to step over? Be scared to death, kind of, but move forward. And that's, once you get on the other side of the fence and you see things happening, you've seen it here before. I was on the board from 08 to 16, and I think when I started, we were $98,000 in debt, and by the end of 16, that was gone, and people are giving, and we have very giving people here to move this project forward, and I think we're sitting in a really good spot. You're seeing the numbers from council and the treasurer and the banks are saying they're giving the green light to whatever we do, and I feel very confident that we can move forward into a new ground. It might be Canaan land when we get there, and you'll say, why didn't we do this years ago? I know we got higher inflation, our home budgets are tighter, but I firmly believe that we need to move forward, and the recommendations that are coming here today are very good. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Anyone else? If not, I'm going to start singing, so I'd recommend questions.
Not a chance. I just wanted to make a comment. I think I know the answer to my question, too. But I happened to be downstairs in the fellowship hall on Wednesday night for most of the evening, and I thought to myself, we can do better than this. And the reason I say that is because I heard multiple Awana leaders saying, it is so hot in our rooms. And I think I could name people who I heard say that. So my question, Levi, are all these rooms throughout this building temperature controlled?
Yeah, yes.
You're saying each room is temperature controlled?
Well, the entire facility will be
Okay,
temperature controlled.
that makes more sense. I had a question, trying to understand, you said about Neil said about finishing the section, correct? To get the girders and the struts in for the unfinished areas. Is that?
Well,
I'm looking.
If that's what I said, that's not how I meant for it to come out. So basically, it moves, he changed the entire roof structure to come out over the whole thing versus it would stop back at the square. Oh, it's not up there, but it would stop back at the square, and we would just have a small jut out there for the bathrooms and the drive-through and that kind of stuff. Oh, okay. So in the 5.1, okay, the orange sections would not be there, which in turn moves pillars and everything else, and then the pitch roof would only be over, you can visualize a line straight across there at the Welcome Center, which is the L there in the middle of but if we are able to do those, and even if we do them where they're just blank open holes, there's nothing in there but steel and concrete, it would change the entire roof structure, which in Neil's opinion was a good move. That you got a pitch roof over the whole thing. It moves some pillars into a better place. It doesn't make things quite so wonky in there in the bathroom and that kind of stuff. It was one of those when we were having the meeting with him, you could see the light come on, and he was kind of like, if we do this right, I think this could cost you, you could build more for less, essentially. So that's why we're bringing it. But obviously we know that's slightly out of our current giving threshold. But as I said, we don't want to hold back what God has in store for us. We know sometimes our minds, like John reiterated, it's easy for me to sit and look at what you make money-wise in a year's time and think, well, that's not realistic, but that's not for us to decide. It's God's timing and what God has a plan for.
So the roof plan that's shown now is the 112, the pitch is out over the whole existing building, correct?
Correct. We have drawings with it the other way as well. We just, for here,
Right.
we presented it the way it is. And the other
No,
ones, the other ones are really hard to see because things stop and then things go, and it still kind of looks the same because of the jut out. And it took us all a while to, when we looked at Neil's drawings, we're like, what is this? But it makes sense whenever you.
No, I think it's any well feasible if we can do it. It would be smart to put those pieces on because of the structural side of it for pain. I mean, just my opinion anyhow. But then they would be able to, we could still get an occupancy permit even though they're unfinished areas. They'll be closed up or.
Correct.
Okay.
At this point, they would be deemed storage at the.
Hey, where's the coffee pots at?
They're in there, trust me.
Just checking.
There is good things that come out of forgetting coffee, though.
Thanks, brother.
One thing that I don't think was mentioned last Sunday or today is one of the beauties of the new structures is the fact that it's all on one level. And currently, right now, if you have any disability or anything, these buildings are very hard to get from floor to floor. They're not handicap accessible. And so for people who do have mobility issues, the new structure really is a good deal. And as I'm looking forward to my senior years, I kind of appreciate that too.
Thank you, Stan. Anybody else? Oh, got one in the back. Couple.
Little help? There we go. Maybe you covered this and I missed it. Going back to the unfinished areas, what exactly will that look like? There'll be concrete slab poured, block walls up. Is that?
It'll be insulated steel structure,
Okay.
concrete slab. I think sprinklers may have to be in there just from a fire code standpoint, but other than that, that's an area that, may give us, if that's the way the Lord leads us, it may give us opportunity for people within the church to be a part of finishing that out, If you're the kind of guy that you can do electrical or drywall or whatever it may be, but, you don't feel there's money to be given, and that's your way of giving to the Lord is through the time, we feel that's a potential. And that's why I say we're trying to give options here where there's a lot up in the air yet. That's why I say it's the opportunity for us. Depending how things look here by the end of the year, maybe those areas are built and unfinished. Maybe we can build and finish part of those areas to be able to use them right away. We just don't know. That's why I said this is our opportunity. It's up to us right now to decide what that looks like moving forward. But we feel we have a lot of options. There's a lot of doors that we can go through here, just depending on the way the Lord leads us.
And the outside, that'll be that will match the actual finished part of the
yeah. So the outside will be finished. It'll be the tin and the stone, or I think it's stone, not block, because that's the way Neil recommended it. And just so everybody does, we didn't mention this here, but I just thought of it. When we talk about the old plan, and it was 5.5, then it went to 8.5 or some crazy number. Those numbers were numbers that Neil was giving us that I'm sure were really good numbers because he's very accurate with the numbers that he gave us even on this. But this one we've gone so far that he has actually given us a legit bid. If we had $5.5 million tomorrow and we said go, he has bid out the electrical, he has bid out the duct work, he has bid it out in a way that we can kind of piece it together. So it is a really real current number that we're coming to you with today.
Thank you.
Just one quick question. It's driving me nuts. What are the stairs in the middle of the building for?
Oh, that's a good question, Bill. So those are in an effort to get us some, it's really hard to see on there, but there's a green outline that would be like a mezzanine. It's not an occupiable area, but we'd be able to use it as a storage area. Christmas decorations, whatever it may be. So I think there's two of them that he has drawn in there, one kind of over the kitchen and one over that bathroom and front area.
I envision it as an opportunity to play American Gladiator in the foyer, and then I can stand up top, and or someone else can like shoot at each other. I'm just giving vision beyond storage.
So there is other opportunities potentially for that area. But yes, that's a very good question. But as you look at this, you look at it and you go, where's the storage? Well, we needed some room for some stuff. So that was a way that, obviously it's going to have high ceilings. So that's a way we can build it up with some knee walls to kind of hide stuff, but you can still be able to put stuff in there. I think there was a question way in the back.
I have as far as Awana, the game circle space. We have Awana game circles in this room that we're in, as well as upstairs in the fellowship hall. The Sparks use the upstairs, we use the downstairs. Is there going to be enough room on a Wednesday night to accommodate all the game circle activities that are currently going on?
I'm giving a really deer in the headlights look because I know we talked about this, but I probably should ask Ashley / Teresa. Is the answer to that question yes, or it's yes in a different fashion?
No, that's a great question because I had the same one, and we went over to the current fellowship hall space because we know the sanctuary, once we tear half of it down, it's going to be more than big enough for a game space. But where the fellowship hall is drawn in this new plan, we went upstairs and compared it to our current fellowship hall, and the way that this new fellowship hall is drawn, the game circle does not quite fit. So we are actually going to be working with and tweaking with the plan to probably remove the right-hand wall of the fellowship hall, which will give us 8 more feet. And then we have to shuffle bathrooms around. So we're going to be making those changes to make sure that that does work for Awana.
Good, thank you.
If we have enough of money come in, what would it cost to have everything finished off?
So I think that number's, so it's 5.1, 5.5, and then potentially 6-ish, I think was the number that we, 6 is the, you just finish the whole thing and move forward. Again, we didn't talk about this. I don't want to take too much time, but there is planning here, and you can see that for future growth in this building, the hallways run to the ends of the building that when we plan it over there, someday we can build a gym on the end of that. The structure on the end of the sanctuary will be built such that it'll have the rafters will be such that if we need to go that way with the sanctuary, we can take the stage out, build more building, and put a new stage in and have more seating. So there was a lot of thought that went into that moving forward that, just like John talked about, I don't know, probably many of you haven't ever been in the church sanctuary attic, but you can go up there and see the history of this place. You can see the roof, built on top of the roof, built on top of the roof, and how they piece things together. So we tried to think a lot like them where makes sense moving forward with this plan.
One last question. Will the lights be automatic, like turn on, turn off, so people don't have to remember to turn off lights?
I don't have the actual answer to that question, but I would feel that's a likely option in today's age. But we didn't get to that finite of detail at this point. Okay, we'll take time we got Brad. Sorry, Ken, you're getting cut off.
Where was that?
And please ask myself, Ryan, any of the guys and gals that you heard that are on the board, the building committee, at any time ask us questions. We'll try and keep giving feedback because obviously we do gotta have worship service here at some point. All right, Brad, go ahead.
The big piece I see missing in the puzzle is a storage facility for snow blowers and whatever, and also maintenance and storage. You know, like a pole building or a small steel structure, you know. And with the property that large, probably ought to be looking at a full-time groundskeeper.
Right, these are things that we've definitely thought through, but don't have finite answers to how that will look, but yes, completely concur and agree, John. All right, Brad, I lied, I said we were gonna have one.
That's okay. Other than handicap parking, is the parking lot gonna be just stone?
Correct. Yes, it'll be paved in the handicapped areas that need to be paved, and then the rest of it at this current time will be stoned. And it will be a large parking lot, which I don't see John yet, but John and I will probably have fun plowing because it'll be one parking lot without buildings in the way. Thank you, everybody. I'll turn it over to Ryan, and as I said, if you have any questions, please feel free to see myself, Ryan, Aaron. Okay, Aaron's going to close off.
Yeah, real quick. Kind of the question of moving forward. At what Ryan's saying is November 20th, we're going to kind of bring to you, the congregation, an opportunity to focus in and kind of have a dedicated give time. If you remember last week, we asked you to do 3 things. We asked you to pray, talk about it, and then respond. And what we've been talking about here, it really is kind of in a way up to the congregation how far we can go with this. And so what it'll look like is give that kind of dedicated, focused window for giving up through the new year. And then once the end of the year comes and we see where all the end of the year giving comes in and how the Lord provides, then at that point we're able to make kind of a final decision of which plan are we going with, how much money would we need to borrow, and all of that will come back to you as a congregation to vote on. So kind of moving forward, in case you're wondering when's the vote, et cetera, it's hard for us to know exactly what to give you to vote because we don't know how the end of the year is going to finish out. And so that all determines what we bring to you at the beginning of next year. And I think this isn't hard and fast, but currently it's possibly at the annual business meeting, but we haven't nailed that down. But just for perspective, that's where we're looking currently to potentially bring it to you as a congregation. So thanks so much.